All right. So hopefully now you kind of see how we can kind of use, expressions here to kind of make to make things a little, do some interesting kind of effects. What I'm trying to do here. All right. So here in exercise 6, we're going to talk about copying expressions. Okay. So here I have 3 red stars. Let me zoom out a little bit here. And bibbity bobbity boom. All right, give me a second. There we go. You can see here on this red star, if I pull open the rotation, that this is currently based on the rotation of the yellow star. So if I move the yellow star, it moves the red star here at the top. Let's say I want to copy this. Now I could, redo the process, but let's imagine I had like, I don't know, 20 of these, right? And I wanted to copy this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go under Edit. And I'm going to go to where it says copy expression only because I don't want to copy like the position or any of the other stuff. I just want to copy the literal code. Okay. So I'm going to go to copy expression only. And then I'm going to go to here and let's do paste. And then that should have set the expression and it did. And you can see now when I move that, I move the other one. And then maybe I'll do it here. So you can see how this would be a nice, quick, easy way to copy expression to multiple items here really quickly. You can even copy expressions between compositions. All right, so I have 2 compositions here. I have this is exercise 7. I have composition A and composition B. Composition A has a rectangle, or square that's rotated about 45 degrees, and composition B has a star. I'm going to go back to composition A, and I'm going to take this rotation, and I'm going to go to Edit, Copy with Property Links. And what this allows you to do is copy properties between compositions. So if I now go to composition B, and I'm going to do paste. I'm going to open this up and it's a little complicated here. I'm not going to lie, but it's like, okay, what this is saying is go to composition A, go to layer red square and get the value of the rotation. So this is composition B. This is rotation is going to be based off of this composition off the red square and whatever this rotation is. So if I change this rotation to 137, just for the sake of argument, I go here, this is set to 137. If I go to, set this to 241, then this goes to 241. So you can see that there's a connection between the compositions. Okay. So you can copy expressions. You even make expressions go between compositions if that's what you want to do. All right. Let's talk about the idea of randomness. Okay. So, you know, let's say I wanted to set up I wanted this like to kind of like, rotate a bunch of like a kind of random, you know what I mean? Like random rotation. So I could like constantly kind of come in here and I'm just gonna set a bunch of keyframes and then like, rotate it a bunch of times, like boom, 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 a boom, boom, so on and so on. Just keep doing this over and over and over. And I could play this back and it's like, I could do that. But like if I wanted to go back and make changes, like I'd have to go back and literally edit like all these keyframes and all that kind of stuff. There's actually a way we could use expressions or coding to make this a little easier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Option here and I'm going to open up Rotation and I'm going to click on this thing that kind of looks like a little play button. And I'm going to go to where it says random numbers, and we're going to do random. Okay. Now, what random means here is literally a random number, like throwing a die or, choosing a number out of a hat or something like that. Okay. Now, when you do this particular expression, it takes two values inside of this, the lowest possible value and the highest possible value. So in other words, if I'm choosing a random number between 0 and 10, the lowest is 0 and the highest would be 10. If it was between 0 and 100, it would be the lowest is 0 and the highest is 100, so on and so on. So for rotation, remember that, a circle can rotate anywhere between 0 and 360 degrees. So the lowest value would be 0, and the highest value would be 360. And so I'm going to play this back, and you can see that not only does this constantly do this so this random number is generated every frame. Okay. Um, But what's kind of interesting about this is one, that it does it more consistently, but also that you can go back and easily update this. So for instance, maybe I don't want it to go, a rotation of 360. Maybe I only wanted to go up to 45 degrees. So I can just, with a small line of code, quickly change that. Okay. Let's see where maybe I could kind of play around with that some more. Maybe I'm going to play around with opacity. So once again, you can either type this out or you can, click on the little plus sign here and go to random numbers, random. I'm going to play around with opacity and I want it to go somewhere between, I don't know, 50 and 100. So the lowest it could be is 50% and the highest is 100. So in other words, what's going to happen is it's going to kind of fade in and out, you know what I mean? Because it's like constantly going from like 80 to 60 to 80 to 1, to 91 to 52, the blah 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 blah. And you get kind of this interesting effect where it's like kind of flashing, right? Because it's constantly changing the value. All right, so I got that. Maybe I'm going to play around with position. I'm going to actually combine this with, so if you remember back when we did position, we had to give it two values. I'm going to set it so that random, um, this is your horizontal position. I'm going to keep the vertical position, which is 240, but we're going to change the horizontal one. Now remember, horizontal goes anywhere from 0 to the width of my composition, which is like, uh, I don't know, let's say 500. So what happens here is your position is equal to a random number between 0 and 500 per frame, but it's always at the same height. So if I play this back, this is constantly changing its value, somewhere between 0 and 500. If I wanted it at random Y values, I could do the same thing. I could play around with scale doing something similar. I'm not going to do both individually, but maybe I'm just going to say, scale is somewhere between 50 to 150. This is going to apply to both the width and the height if you don't do that little group pairs here. Oops, okay, I guess I can't do it that way. Uh, transform dot scale. So I do have to do that pair, and we're going to do random, I don't know, 50 to 150. That's for the X value scale, and then 50 to 150 for the Y value scale. And then, all right, playing around with, different X percentages and Y percentages. All right, so you can really come up with some really interesting things here. All right, I want you guys to try that out. That was 6, 7, or 5, 6, and 7, please. Okay. Or I think there was like two sevens in there. I think I maybe, yeah, okay. There's six, seven, and then another seven because this is poorly done. Sorry about that. But try that out, okay?